A NATO official has come out and put a number to how badly Ukraine's strikes have devastated the Russian oil industry. Just what is Russia going to do in the face of their funding for their war machine? Plus, is Russia running its spin machine to the government of France, who frankly doesn't appear to be taking it lying down? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. So we know it from, well, if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that Ukraine has pivoted in the face of a relative stalemate on the battlefield and no prospects for significant aid in the near future. They've pivoted to a tactic focusing on targeting Russian oil refineries. And this is a really interesting tactic and something that, frankly, even a lot of Western partners have been very critical of. The reason is because a lot of Western countries, and the U.S. in particular, have been dealing with a pretty severe inflation issue. And the inflation is driven a lot by the price of oil, right? Because you have to think almost every good that is sold in any Western country is transported there via some kind of petroleum-fueled vehicle, a ship, a truck, a train, or a car or an aircraft, right? And so the fact that a major oil-producing country is having a substantial portion of its oil production damaged is going to have knock-on effects throughout the global oil economy. And that would cause a rise in the price of at least refined crude oil, right? Strangely enough, this may actually produce in terms of relatively unusable crude oil, it may actually make the price greater because crude oil is just a raw material. It can't do anything itself. It has to be refined. And the Ukrainians are targeting Russian refining capacities. And so we've known this for a long time. We talked about how even just yesterday, or 2 days ago, there was a series of strikes targeting this Russian oil refineries as well as a Shahed drone factory. But now a NATO official has come out and said that the estimates are that up to 15% of Russian refining capacity has been knocked offline. That's more than 1 in 8 barrels of Russian oil, well, it has gone up in smoke. And what's fascinating is that the assessment is actually that the strikes have probably disrupted more than 10% of Russia's refinery capacity and maybe more than 15%, right? And of course, the official also noted that because the Ukrainians are becoming more and more innovative with their drone capacity, that fewer and fewer types of Russian energy facilities are safe from these strikes. Now, for Ukraine, right, what Russia may find is that its ability to fund the war effort is governed in large part by its ability to sell oil. And if that ability is reduced, if they're trying instead to have to sell unrefined crude, right, it's going to be a loss of net revenues for the Russian state, right? And that in turn may require them to reduce their war machine's sort of churn. And if this is accompanied by an increase in aid to Ukrainian forces, you may start to see the battlefield look a little more equal. Now, we all know Russia. Russia knows how to spin just about anything, right? But before we talk about this weird phone call between France and Russia, I wanted to quick shout out combatvetnews.com. You guys probably know that there have been a huge uptick in Russian mechanized assaults across the front line. And I do deep dive analysis of those videos, right? Drone footage, and break down the Ukrainian tactics and how they're refining their tactics even further, becoming even more efficient with how they take out these Russian troops. But I can't put them on YouTube. I have to put them on combatvetnews.com, and it's for premium members only. The videos drop twice a week, and this is the way I sustain myself, right? YouTube has cracked down pretty heavily on videos in general. They've demonetized. There's been some weird stuff going on with the algorithm where like videos that I'm pretty sure will be do well become these like absolute tanks. They just don't get any views. And I don't know. I think YouTube has it out for smaller creators because we're seen as kind of liabilities, and they want to direct people to only to major news outlets, which obviously don't have a bias at all. So anyway, if you're interested in getting access to those videos that YouTube won't let me show you, and you want to support what I do, just become a member, right? $5 will get you access to all the videos. But of course, if you want to support me at the lieutenant tier, you get those shout outs at the end of the video. And the colonel tier, right? We give you your own page at the end of the shout outs. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys so very much. New videos literally dropping today. I'm going to record it right after this. Okay, so here's where things get weird. Now, since 2022, the French and Russian, there haven't been any high-level meetings between the two of them, not even a phone call. But now, recently, there actually was a phone call between France's head of their armed forces, Sébastien Lecornu, and Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu. And this is interesting because Shoigu's, these are high-level talks, and it was an hour-long conversation, which is enough time to really get into some substantive issues. And as is the norm in most Western countries, when these official phone calls happen, there's a release of a summary of the call. And the French were pretty straightforward, right? They talked about, about what you would think they would talk about, right? They said that France, they discussed the attack on Moscow committed by the Islamic State. The French minister firmly condemned the attack and reiterated France's solidarity with the victims and their families, something I think everybody can support. And he confirmed that France had no information to establish a link between this attack and Ukraine, which we know Russia has been desperately trying to create some kind of link. They're doing a classic move here where they just ask a question so many times that people feel compelled to believe that there's a secret truth, right? So let's say every video I asked, and remember, where is Joe Biden's alien son, right? Why is he hiding why would he hide an alien son? Where is it? And the answer is, that's preposterous. There is no U.S. president has an alien son. And why would he hide the alien son? He doesn't have an alien son, so he can't be hiding it, right? That's the clear answer. But if I asked it, and then other internet commentators asked it, and then news reports started asking it, just asking the question, eventually it would become a real issue about where is the president's alien son, right? All without a shred of evidence, because I'm just asking a question, right? So that's what Russia's trying to do with this Ukraine link. They're asking things like, why hasn't the U.S. disclosed that there isn't a link between the ISIS and Ukrainians? Why did the attackers flee to Ukraine? Why does Ukraine, where is the evidence? That's literally their question. They're like, where's the evidence? Right? Every time they ask France, where's the evidence? There isn't any, dude. There's no evidence, right? And it's like, how can you prove that Ukraine wasn't linked to these attacks? The answer is the absence of evidence is itself proof. Unless you have a text or something from ISIS-K being like, guys, I talked to Ukraine. They said they won't help us. Send. Nobody does that. So I say that because Russia's a master of creating these non-issues, and they're trying to continue to do so here. And in fact, France kind of played into their hands by even confirming that this conversation happened, right? And though, again, this is done so in the most clean way possible, right? And then it acknowledges the minister called on Russia to stop all exploitation, he means of the attack, and recalled France's availability, as they have always done in the face of terrorism, for increased exchanges with the aim of fighting the threat of terror as effectively as possible. And the minister unreservedly condemned the war of aggression Russia has launched in Ukraine, and recalled that France will continue to support Ukraine as long and as intensely as necessary in its fight for freedom and sovereignty to bring peace and security to the European continent, which is actually a stronger stance than we've seen in the past, right? France, of course, sometimes serving as kind of a go-between between Russia and other European countries, right, historically. But here's where things get weird. Russia has a very different write-up. Russia's comments are just sort of bizarre, right? Paris said, of course, it was exclusively dedicated, right? Paris basically confirmed what that write-up said. Moscow instead decided to use the opportunity to make some pretty explicit threats against France. Right after the call, Russia hinted that there might be involvement of France's secret services in the terror attack in Moscow. And of course, Moscow continuing to try to pin the attack on Ukraine with no proof. Quote, this is a quote from the Russian, from the Kremlin. Quote, the Kiev regime doesn't do anything without a nod from its Western backers. We hope, in this case, that the French secret services aren't behind it. Right? This is like, I hope Joe Biden's alien son is being well cared for. Like, you know, it's preposterous. It's just, it's a technique in order to introduce doubt and confusion into an issue, right? Of course, Macron coming out and saying this is absolute crap. And this back and forth continues to be a shouting match where, much like if you've ever heard the analogy of you can't fight with a pig because the pig will never listen to reason. He'll just drag you into the mud and enjoy every second of it, right? And that is really what trying to have some of these high-level diplomatic conversations with Russia in the midst of a war is that Russia doesn't really care about what's true or about reaching a consensus. They're more interested in creating confusion among the public about what has happened, what is going on, what the current state of affairs is. And by introducing lots and lots of confusion, they make it hard for voters in these countries to know what's really going on. They make it hard for the Russian public to have a sense of where NATO really stands. And they, of course, are trying to make it hard for Ukraine to create fear that Ukraine's allies are going behind its back, working with the Russians in ways that they aren't aware of, right? Of course, France also subject to Russian disinformation attacks, going after the president's wife and accusing France and Poland of trying to dismember Ukraine, which is kind of weird because why would Russia view that as bad, given that that's literally their state policy? They have literally declared portions of Ukraine to be Russian. So then sitting there and being like, well, I have a secret for you. It's like, you're trying to dismember Ukraine. And they're like, the thing you've already done, like that's explicitly your policy right now. So just a classic, just more classic Russian diplomatic nonsense. Anyway, guys, join us on Combat Vet News for today's video. It's going to be a doozy. Lots of Russian armor getting deleted. And thanks to all the members. I couldn't do it without you guys. Hit like and subscribe.